This verse shows us what happens after the ministry of the two witnesses has been killed. And they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. We learned earlier that dead bodies in the Greek is doma. It's one word, and it can also be translated failure or fallen. And there are 6 other words that could have been used for dead, but this one is the only one that says it was a failure or had fallen. So my interpretation is the ministry had failed or fallen. The first part of this verse, and they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations, reveals that what is going on in the churches is happening all over the world. It can be known by everyone because of the worldwide proliferation of the electronic media, or even without the media. If you live in a small town and the church begins to struggle, and half the people are against the minister and half wanting to stay, it can become the talk of the whole town, where everyone knows about it. Certainly, what is going on in the churches does affect everyone in some way. So this verse says there was no burial permitted, that they would not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. And I believe what this is saying is, when something like this happens, people talk about it, and talk about it, and talk about it, and embellish it, and build on it, till it can become something that never happened, the way they talk about it, because the enemy wants to destroy the church, and demons are going to fuel people's gossip, and they just won't let it die. They just keep on talking about it. I know of an instance where a godly man in a small town was a pastor and was accused of something which he had never ever done, and people talked about it and talked about it. 10 years later, we visited near that town, and they were still talking about it. They just never shut up. They wouldn't let it die. It says here that everyone will see their dead bodies. A ministry doesn't exactly have a dead body, but it can leave behind some remains of the ministry, even though the ministry has been killed, and perhaps the minister has left town. There may be left behind the books he has written, or perhaps some other literature he provided for the church members. Most churches record their services. Therefore, many CDs of the ministry may still be in the homes of the people or stacked in a corner of the church building. Perhaps they built a church building while they were there. There will be visible things left behind as a result of the ministry that was brought forth there. Additionally, the deposits made in the hearts and minds of the people will remain and can be seen in their changed lives. This goes on for 3.5 days. We will interpret this according to the spiritual meaning of the numbers. 3 is the number of completion. Half can be division or separation. Putting these together, my interpretation is, this takes place for the period of time necessary, that would be days, to bring completion, that's 3, of separation, that's half, between the believers who believed in the ministry and those who rejected it. I'm going to say that again. Putting these together, my interpretation is this. This takes place for the period of time necessary to bring completion of separation between the true believers who believed in the ministry and those who rejected it. What happens in the church even goes out into the town where people talk. People choose sides even when they weren't involved in the church. Some are for the ministry and some are against it. As people talk, they are revealing what is in their hearts. I would like to give one example of a ministry that fell. It was not a good ministry. It was a bizarre ministry, and people were very much damaged by it. So it's not a perfect example here, but it is an example of how people can talk and how it impacts the lives of people. For those too young to remember, Jim Jones, pastor of a large church in California, led over 1,000 of his members to a plot of land in Guyana where they were supposedly going to build a utopian community called Jonestown. Things did not go well for them, and it wasn't long before many of the people realized they were virtual prisoners of Jim Jones, surrounded by jungle with no way of escape. In the United States, worried family members and friends of the duped congregation entreated Congress to send a delegation to investigate. This congressional group, headed by Leo Ryan, wound up being shot to death near their plane in the jungle, and 913 members of this religious cult were murdered by their leaders when forced to drink cyanide-laced punch. When this news broke in America, the gossip mongers in America, and probably worldwide, lost no time in spreading the lie that any religious group not associated with a recognized denomination was a cult. There are many very good churches that are not in recognized denominations. So this was an assault on a lot of ministries. Some ministries did not survive this assault, and their pastors left the ministry. Other ministries were just resurrected in another place or another form. I'm going to state this verse again and give my interpretation in a condensed form. And they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. My interpretation is, this upheaval in the established churches is going on all over the world. It can be known by everyone because of the worldwide electronic media and also because of the gossip of local people. The remains of the ministry, that would be dead bodies, are visible. The books, CDs, videos, buildings, etc., and also the changed lives of the people. This continues for the period of time necessary to bring completion of separation, that's 3 days and a half, between the true believers who received the ministry and those who rejected it. When the churches separate because of this powerful ministry, those who oppose the ministry won't drop the issue, but keep it ongoing with their gossip. That's bodies not put in graves. I'll state that one more time. This upheaval in the established churches is going on all over the world. It can be known by everyone because of the worldwide electronic media and also because of the gossip of local people. The remains of the ministry are visible, the books, CDs, videos, buildings, etc., and also the changed lives of the people. This continues for a period of time to bring completion of separation between the true believers who received the ministry and those who rejected it. When the churches separate because of this powerful ministry, those who oppose the ministry won't drop the issue, but keep it ongoing with their gossip. Continuing on now with the next verse, verse 10, And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them, and make merry, and shall send gifts one to another, because these 2 prophets tormented them that dwelt on the earth. Spiritually speaking, to dwell upon the earth can mean to live in a worldly manner, focused on things of the earth rather than higher, more heavenly things. Certainly people rejoicing over the death of anyone would be very carnal people. The people who rejoice over the demise of the ministry are carnal people who live spiritually in a lower realm. When you are the object of people's gossip, you sometimes wonder if those people really have a life, or are they just so bored they don't have anything else to do but talk about other people. Sending gifts to one another happens when people become good friends. When there is an issue in a community that some people oppose, they often become friends with like-minded people with whom they would not normally fraternize. It is quite possible that they literally would give each other gifts. There's that old saying, the enemy of my friend is my enemy. Well, that happens more than we would like to think. As for tormenting people, certainly the witnesses did not torment anybody. If people felt tormented by them, it was because their own conscience was hurting them. There is something in the carnal nature of humankind that wants to believe bad things about other people. They like to talk about people and report bad things. They celebrate because they no longer have to listen to the convicting words that tormented their conscience. That is why they are rejoicing that the ministry is gone, because it can no longer convict them of their own sin. I've been talking about this happening on a small scale. I believe we're going to see it happen worldwide, and even now we can see the United States building up to this. In the mainstream media, Christians are almost always made to look like fools in movies and television programs. If an alleged criminal ever had contact with the church, that is what they'll emphasize in their news report. For example, quote, "This 60-year-old Sunday school teacher held up a bank and escaped with everyone's hard-earned money." End quote. You aren't told that he taught for about a month in some church 30 years ago before the Christians ran him out after discerning his true character. Christians are going to become the scapegoats for everything evil that happens. In America, in April of 2013, when the Boston Marathon bombings took place, the first news report said they suspected right-wing extremists of the crime. Right-wing extremists often being Christians and people who believe in the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. This hits the public over and over again, perhaps hundreds or thousands of times, until people begin to believe that Christians are the cause of everything wrong in our nation. This is the same tactic Hitler used against the Jews. Even though Christians are not ultimately the cause of the crime, all the media has to say is that they are suspected. Eventually, people start believing it, even though it has never been proven true. The public will rejoice when they are able to shut down the churches, and they no longer have to be reminded of the gospel. Taking all references to Christ out of Christmas also soothes their consciences. Here is the verse once more with my short interpretation. "And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them and make merry, and shall send gifts one to another, because these two prophets tormented them that dwelt on the earth." The people who have chosen to live a worldly life of satisfying their own selfish lusts, and who have joined with like-minded others to oppose this ministry, that's them that dwell on earth, rejoice at sending gifts, because their conscience will no longer prick them now that the ministry is finished. I'll repeat that. The people who have chosen to live a worldly life of satisfying their own selfish lusts, and who have joined with like-minded others to oppose this ministry, rejoice because their conscience will no longer prick them now that the ministry is finished.